Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and welcome back to another Commandery guide video. Today we're building off our last video where we showcased a small city template build for commerce plus industry commanderies. Therefore, logically, we'll continue today with a template build for peasantry commanderies. So let's get started. Peasantry income is actually a much more complicated topic than commerce and industry income. So in order to make things clear, I'll first lay the groundworks with a few key concepts. First, we cannot talk about peasantry income without talking about food production. The land development building chain, which is the key source of peasantry income in the game, also plays a key role in your food production in the game. It can be geared toward food production, or it can sell food for more peasantry income. The relationship between food and peasantry income is farther linked by peasantry income counties like the livestock farm, which also produces food. So it is important that we look at both food and peasantry income together in this guide. Second, now that we established the need to talk about food with peasantry income, we must bring attention to the concept of fertility. Every commandery in the game is given one of three fertility levels. They can either be low fertility, average fertility, or high fertility. You can see the fertility level of your commandery by checking the lower left corner of your commandery information panel, as shown here. It is represented by a rice bowl symbol, and it shows you the different buffs or debuffs associated with the fertility level for each season. This buff or debuff changes with the season, as shown here. In essence, low fertility commanderies reduces your peasantry income, but does not impact your food production. While in high fertility commanderies, both peasantry income and food production are boosted. If we borrow a concept from economics, we can use comparative advantage to decide that it's better to utilize your low fertility commanderies to produce food and to utilize your high fertility commanderies to maximize peasantry income. Lastly, we have to talk about population a little bit. There will be a time and place for proper talk about population and public order, but now I'm just interested in talking about how population correlates with a passive peasantry income multiplier boost. As your population grows, you'll gain an increased peasantry income multiplier that ranges from 0% to 350%. For example, with a 1 million population, you'll receive 65% peasantry income multiplier. At 2 million, it becomes 100%. So we should always consider upgrading your settlement level as a possible boost to peasantry income in any of our builds. Alright, now that we have laid the groundworks for our guide, let's start by looking at the two building chains that really matters for peasantry income, which are the land development and the government support building chains. Starting with the land development building chain, we see there are essentially two paths. One path produces food and moderate level of peasantry income, while the other path consumes food and produces a high level of peasantry income. Other than peasantry income and food, all land development buildings also increase population growth. One thing to note here is that for settlements that are level 3 or lower, that is a large town, a town, or a small town, you can only upgrade the land development building to level 3. Once you have a small city or a level 4 settlement, then you can upgrade it all the way to level 5, which is different from most other building chains, which only unlocks level 5 buildings with a small regional city or a level 7 settlement. This is particularly important when you consider how to make the most efficient build for different purposes for peasantry income. Next, we have the government support building chain. For this building chain, there is a branching at level 3 that offers a trade-off between higher food production and higher peasantry income. For the government support building, small town, town, and large town can upgrade the building to level 2. Level 3, 4, and 5 are unlocked by the level 4 small city, except for the level 5 Willowing Machine Workshop, which is only unlocked for a level 7 small regional city. Now that we know which buildings we're mainly dealing with, we can talk about a few template builds. Template 1, the cheapest food producer. This build is ideal for commanderies with just a farmland, like Anping or Shangdan. Because farmlands do not provide peasantry income and only produce food, we can minimize our spending to develop these commanderies, and instead use them as cheap sources of food to help support our other high-level settlement commanderies who are bringing home the bacon. By only requiring the settlement level to be level 1, you can repeatedly sack and withdraw from these commanderies when taking them to gain more gold and experience for your troop. Then you can easily and cheaply build a commandery that is income neutral and brings in at least 13 food for your empire. The actual food production could be around 20 if you consider potential reforms that can boost food production from farming. Now, we can easily improve on this build for our template number 2, or the cheaper food producer. This build is an improvement on template 1 because we can easily produce a bit more food. If we upgrade the settlement to level 2, we can have 2 slots and also add a level 2 government support building to improve food production by additional 50%. The 25% increase in peasantry income also can help offset the increase in building upkeep. Both of these builds are minimalist builds. They require very little resources, but also offers very little return. They are self-reliant builds and will not cause any public order issue, but they're not efficient. Because the level 4 settlement or the small city unlocks building upgrades to level 5, it is more efficient to find a template that works for a small city, since buildings become much more efficient with each additional upgrade. So I present to you template 3, or the efficient food producer. Here, we have a level 5 land development building in the Magnet Estate and a level 5 government support building in the Grand Irrigation Canal. Although you might think we took the wrong branch of the government support building chain for a food production focused commandery, we actually didn't, because the level 5 wooling machine workshop cannot be built by a level 4 small city. Therefore, a level 5 Grand Irrigation Canal clearly outclasses the level 4 farm tool distribution. The only drawback with this build is that the level 5 Grand Irrigation Canal requires 4 additional reforms, or roughly 20 turns, so it might not be a practical choice in the early game, but it is definitely the better choice in the late game because of the additional 65% peasantry income multiplier boost. Now that we're on the topic of reforms, let's take a look at the relevant reforms for this build. We can see here there are 10 reforms in total that are relevant to this build. Together, they offer a variety of buffs like 10% discount to all agriculture building construction costs, an additional 30% peasantry income multiplier boost, 9k population growth per turn, and additional 50% food from farming. Now, 10 reform is a lot to ask for in the early game. So if we forgo the level 5 Grand Irrigation Canal and instead build the level 4 farm tool distribution like we mentioned before, it will have the same 100% food production boost. And we can limit the reform to just these 6 and lose out on most of the buffs we just mentioned. So ideally, we still want to eventually aim for hitting all 10 of these reforms. It all really just depends on your other needs in the early game. Okay, there is still one thing missing from our template build here, and that is the third building. There isn't a best choice here, but there are a few good options, and here are a few of my favorites. My number 1 choice is the tax collection building chain. If you have seen any of my other videos, whether they are my guides or my Let's Plays, you know I love these buildings. They are free to build, and they increase your income by a lot. It's basically free money. I know there is a huge penalty to public order, but from my hundreds of hours of playing this game, I don't think rebellions are a big threat, and population loss is not an issue if you are only focused on producing food from these commanderies. My second choice, for those of you scared of the Yellow Turban Rebellion, is the Conscription Building chain. I heard from a lot of you that you built military infrastructure as your third building, but with a small city that just have one farmland county, the max population is just 1.3 million, which translates into a -6 public order from population. This is very manageable and can be fixed with leader, heir, or prime minister's skills, trades, or items, or just simply from reforms. There is no need to overreact and build an upkeep-intensive building in the military infrastructure just so you can have 100 public order. There is no prize for having 100 public order, so don't be OCD about it and instead build an upkeep-free conscription building in this build. Since this template is about efficient food producer, we already achieved that with our first two building, and nothing we can build in the third slot can improve our food production. So it's essentially a free slot. And since we already have two agriculture building and one agricultural county, there is a 45% discount to building military buildings from the Wuxing building synergies. Therefore, the conscription building is perfect for this slot. It will be the cheapest to build, cheapest to upkeep, and the most useful in your campaign. At the max level of 3, the conscription building requires 2 reforms, one of which is called garrison conscription, which reduces military building costs by another 25%. So get this reform first, and you'll be building the conscription building at a 70% discount. Yes, if you didn't know already, I love discounts and saving money. Heck, I advocate disbanding all your units on turn 1 to save money, but that's another guide. Let's go back to talking about how great the conscription building is for the third slot. With a level 3 conscription building, you get +2 seasonal revenue deployment, -5% faction-wide redeployment cost reduction, and +3 ranks for new recruits recruited in this commandery. There is a -12k population growth per turn penalty, but your land development building and agricultural reform can overcome this easily. Of the 3 buffs, the -5% faction-wide redeployment cost reduction is game-breaking. When this figure reaches 100% with the help of leader, heir, and prime minister skills, reforms, and buffs from multiple conscription buildings, you can then teleport whole armies across the map for free by simply recalling them and redeploying them a turn later. This is game-breaking and essential to prevent any long marches in the late game. Next, the +2 seasonal retinue deployment might seem a bit useless, but if you start to utilize the teleportation strategy, then you quickly find out that the default deployment limit of 3 retinues per season is far from enough. So this synergizes well with the discount. Additionally, adding 3 ranks to all new recruit is a massive buff in its own right. Higher rank units have better stats and thus offer more bang for the buck when you are recruiting new armies. If these 2 choices that we just talked about don't interest you, then I give up and will concede to you to let you build the military infrastructure building. In all honesty, the building is pretty good. It's a military building, so it will still enjoy the 45% discount like the conscription building. The version I prefer here is the one that offers +6 public order, which is just enough to make the commandery public order neutral. It also adds 15 military supply to help your city withstand sieges, reduce enemy armies' military supply by 5 a turn, add a full retinue garrison to your city, and provide walled trebuchets during siege defense, all for a price of 30 gold upkeep per turn, so I can't really complain here. While these 3 are the most logical choices, there is one more choice I feel fits here, and that's the coin maker building. This building can assist you in reducing corruption for adjacent commanderies, so this is a late game choice, and highly depends on whether you have worthwhile commanderies nearby, so I would not always recommend this option. Next, we'll take a look at different type of template focused on peasantry income rather than food production, and we have template 4, the efficient peasantry income build. This will be our final template build for this guide, and instead of farmland commanderies, this build is best for high fertility commanderies with a lumberyard or a livestock farm. Because of the rationale provided before, we'll only consider the build for level 4 small city, since the level 5 buildings that are unlocked by the small city are vastly superior to those allowed by a level 3 large town or below. For this build, we will have a level 5 grand food market, which sells 18 food for 280 peasantry income. There is an option in the land development building chain that sells 24 food for 300 peasantry income and 20% commerce income multiplier boost. But since this build contains no commerce income, the value of 6 food is far greater than the 20 peasantry income difference provided, so I recommend just building the grand food market for efficiency. To this build, we can add the level 5 grand irrigation canal again to boost income by 100%. And to complete this peasantry income build, the third building must be the tax collection building. This build will have a lot of public order issues, so you should keep an army on hand to farm those Yellow Turban Rebellion if you want to go heavy on this build. If you want to upgrade the small city to a city to gain an additional building slot to build a temple or military infrastructure building at this point to fix the public order issue with this build, you have my blessings. But I think it would be better to just stick with a small city, assign a champion administrator with a full retinue of spear guard to help defend the city from rebellions. Champions make excellent peasantry administrator with their trust skill that boosts peasantry income by additional 20%. They also have abundance, which adds 5 food production as well to help counteract the grand food market. Alright, this concludes this guide. I hope y'all enjoyed the content. Although this guide is a sister guide to the Commerce and Industry guide released earlier this week, we took a different approach here because building water is a lot simpler here and matters a lot less. As a rule of thumb, once you have a level 1 version of both buildings, you should fully upgrade the government support building first before upgrading the land development building. If you end up building a military building in the third slot, build that after everything else is level 5 to get the full 45% discount rather than just the 30% discount. There is one factor that we didn't really cover in depth in this guide, and that's the concept of adjusting taxation levels. So in the game, you can adjust tax levels after you reach the rank of Duke, I believe. And by adjusting the tax level up, you can boost tax income levels by 10 to 20%, boost food production by 25 or 50%, and increase public order disorder by 6 or 15. I usually don't adjust these in my game, since this is applied uniformly to all your commanderies. I feel like it causes too many rebellions across your empire without the proper level of rewards, because not all your commanderies produce food or are focused on peasantry, so I usually leave it unchanged in my games, so I don't see the need to talk about it much in this guide. Other than that, I think we covered everything. The next A Better Commandery guide will drop next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and will cover everyone's favorite commandery, Jianye. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and see y'all then. Bye!